I just wanted to assure everyone that we have identified and implemented the changes required to assure that what happened on January 13th will never ever be repeated again. At that time, I promised you a full, transparent, unbiased report of the event and the activities leading up to the event. That report has been distributed to all of you this morning. I fully support, I've been briefed on that report and the personnel actions that resulted from the findings in the report, and fully support it. I certainly look forward to further improvements in the public Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. Today, this effort is the beginning of our effort to restore the public trust in the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. General Lovell.
Thank you, Governor. Aloha and good morning. On January 15th, I directed Brigadier General Oliveira to conduct an investigation into the false ballistic missile alert on January 13th. Based on his findings, I have taken the following personnel actions. 1 employee has been terminated. 1 employee resigned before any disciplinary action was taken. We're in the process of suspending 1 employee without pay. And finally, after numerous discussions over the past 2 weeks with Major General Miyagi, a respected military leader, an honorable man, has taken full responsibility for the incident of January the 13th and the actions of all his employees. He submitted his letter of resignation to me this morning, and I have accepted that resignation effective today. And there will be a transition period with the interim administrator. I've appointed Brigadier General Moses Kauivi, currently the Director of Joint Staff, the Hawaii National Guard, to fill the position on an interim basis until we can hire a permanent administrator. I took the personnel actions to begin the process of rebuilding the trust in the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency while remaining capable of responding to any emergency on the horizon. General Oliveira's task was to examine the chain of events that led to the false alert. Also look at the established protocols and training and determine if sufficient recall protocol was in place. His report also includes a list of recommendations based on his findings, which I support. Thank you for acting quickly and thoroughly, General Oliveira.
Good morning. I'm Brigadier General Retired Bruce Oliveira. I'm the investigating officer for the false ballistic missile alert investigation on January 3rd, 2018. The tasks that was given were 4 tasks, very focused on my investigation. The first one was, what was the exact chain of events that led to the issuance of the statewide ballistic missile alert message initiated during the course of Haiima's state warning point change of shift at approximately 0800 hours on January 13th, 2018. Second, what was the established protocol that Haiima warning point members were to follow during the change of shift checklist simulation, and who established that checklist? Third, how many times had Haiima warning point members previously practiced the checklist? And what, if any, training records exist? And then finally, did the established checklist include a response protocol in the event of a false statewide ballistic missile attack message? The format of the report begins with a synopsis, then a timeline, then the protocol that was used during the event, followed by findings, and then finally my recommendations. To highlight some of the findings, first, employee 1 said he didn't know it was an exercise, even though 5 others that were in the warning point room at that time heard exercise, 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 which indicates that it is a drill and informs everybody that it is a drill. Furthermore, when it became apparent that the real-world alert was issued, Employee 1 seemed confused, he froze, and another employee had to take over his responsibilities. Employee 1 also had a history of confusing drill and real-world events. Second, there was no response protocol in the event of a false ballistic missile message, even though the preparedness branch had identified the need to establish a response protocol. Third, it took 38 minutes for the second wireless emergency message to go out. There are many reasons why and factors involved in the amount of time that it took. The state warning point had to follow its procedures. It had to notify leadership. It was making corrections and trying to get a second message out, and also contacted FEMA to coordinate other messages. To highlight my findings, first, drills of this nature should be simulated if it's an exercise with a separate standalone computer, separate standalone message that comes out stating clearly that it is a drill. Second, install a computer process that rapidly issues an alert cancellation. That has already been done. Third, revise the checklist to standardize the process and eliminate any kind of confusion, to include, for example, a two-person rule. So when a person does an event on the checklist, that somebody is verifying that is being completed, and then second, to repeat all directives on the checklist as they're going through the checklist, so that everyone can verify that step 1 has been completed, step 2 is completed, and so forth. There's much more in this report. I will now turn it back over to Lieutenant Colonel Anthony for your questions.
Civil Aid was the first media organization to arrive today, so they get the first question.
Yeah, do you guys concur with the FCC report that also dropped earlier this morning? Particularly, it mentions that,
the FCC mentioned that there was some sort of a miscommunication, but in what their preliminary findings have, that there was some sort of a miscommunication between the two shift supervisors. What I've just been able to scan in the last couple of minutes, I don't immediately see something in your report that indicates that there was some sort of miscommunication in how that drill went about. Can you clarify if, on your end, if you saw some sort of mishap between the two supervisors?
The only miscommunication that happened, and this is also noted in my report, and there's much more in the report, in my report, compared to the FCC's report. However, because the drill was taking place during a change of shift brief, there were two shifts at the same time, and there was confusion on who was in charge and who needed to do what procedure.
Confusion as far as whether which shift was going to be doing the drill?
Correct. So you had a duplication of responsibilities in there. You had a shift leader, you had state warning points from the outgoing shift, you had warning officers from the incoming shift, and when they practiced this drill, it was confusing on who was in charge, who's giving out the orders, who's supposed to follow up and do the procedures? Was it shift 1, the outgoing shift, or shift 2 that was the incoming? That was some confusion. However, I don't believe it led to the actual false missile alert, the selection of the false missile alert message.
Then what did, if not that confusion? What was the primary reason then, if not that confusion?
The protocol was not in place. The protocol was very general. It was not detailed, and the safeguards that I was recommending at the beginning about a 2-person rule, where you have one person that's verifying that the other person has done the correct applications, and then second, to have all procedures being repeated. So you have the directive that's given out, the person receiving that's in charge of doing that procedure repeats that procedure so that everybody verifies, yes, it has been completed.
Mahia Eleni, why don't you take the next question?
Thanks, General. Mahia Eleni Richardson from Hawaii News Now. So the FCC's report said that the midnight shift supervisor basically didn't follow the protocols in terms of the alert. Was that what you found? And why wasn't this information about 2 employees not revealed to the media or the public initially?
The protocol, as it was developed at that time, was followed. But again, it was very general and left a lot of room for interpretation by the shift. The message that was given out was not according to the script that was in the protocol. However, the script itself was preceded with exercise, 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 and then ended with exercise, 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 which indicates to everyone that this is an exercise. It's not an actual drill. So what was actually said in the script was taken from an actual notification, and that's what was used. And there was some flexibility by the shift leader who gave that shift message. It wasn't verbatim as in the message itself. However, again, exercise, exercise preceding, and then ending with exercise, 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 tells everybody that this is a practice drill. I'm sorry, what was your second part of the question?
You answered it, but in terms of the employee who actually triggered the alert, you mentioned that this employee had confused real-world events to testing events. Was this an issue before, and why wasn't the agency alerted of this before this mistake?
This was looked at before. The employee has been on for over 10 years. And throughout the 10 years, there have been indications that, well, there have been reports that he has performance issues. And throughout the 10 years, he has confused drills at least 2 times. A real-world drill and a practice drill. It has been noted. They made on-spot corrections. He has been counseled, and it has ended there.
And so to clarify, this employee has been terminated?
Yes, that's correct. This employee has been terminated.
Pardon me?
Yes, that's correct. The employee was terminated.
And the midnight shift supervisor, this employee has been put on leave. What's happened with that employee?
That employee has not been disciplined in any way based on the recommendations and findings within the report.
Manolo, next question.
Manolo Morales with KHON2 News. Now, as far as the day shift supervisor, I know the FCC report said that he was not in a proper location. Where was the day shift supervisor at the time?
Both supervisors were out in the hallway. So the supervisor was the one that simulated the PACOM message coming into the state warning point. And they used the phone that was out in the hallway to call into the state warning point. That was initiated by the outgoing shift. The incoming shift supervisor was out in the hallway also with the outgoing shift supervisor. He spent more time in my investigation. He should have been at the state warning point, in the room.
So the day shift supervisor, has he been disciplined?
When it comes to discipline questions, I'm going to have to refer it back to General Logan.
At this time, based on the facts and circumstances that I understand it, we have not taken disciplinary action against that supervisor.
On another note, the FCC report also talked about, mentioned that they did not get the statement from the actual employee number one until a week ago. My understanding is that employee actually submitted that statement immediately or right after it actually happened. Why was it not given to the FCC right away? And also, why was it not shared to the public?
Right. The statement from the employee, from employee one, was a written statement that was received from employee one 2 days after the incident. That statement was a statement that I requested and was for my investigation. So it was part of my investigation, and I was not able to release that to anyone until the investigation is complete.
Wouldn't it have helped, considering the state wanted to be transparent? Also, it would have helped probably with the threats that he was getting, knowing that he thought it was a real attack.
We looked at receiving everything and looking at completing the final investigation before taking any further action. So we needed to, even though we had his statement, it was a standalone statement, it had to be compared and investigated with other statements and other interviews that were completed, the timeline itself, and come up with all the facts. And all those facts then had to be presented to General Logan, and General Logan then had to agree with those facts, which he did, and then the disciplinary action followed.
Don't you think the public reaction might not have been so strong if they knew that he thought it was a real attack?
Well, we had to sort out whether it was, whether he thought it was, or whether it wasn't. My responsibility was based off of the preponderance of evidence, whether or not he felt it was.
Well, the name of the employee who...
I'm sorry. Wayne had the next question. We'll get to you afterwards.
I apologize for the length of my question. Wayne Yoshioka, Hawaii Public Radio. When you look at the human error that occurred at the state warning point, that was a human error. But if you look at it, you always find a sequence of events leading up to this error. Was it the true human error done in July 2017 when the assumption was that a 150 kiloton nuclear warhead would be coming down on Oahu, when in fact you have 20 nuclear submarines, and if you want to ignite a nuclear reaction, all you need is a tour helicopter? Did you look at the basic assumptions for even calling this missile alert as part of your investigation?
Wayne, who are you addressing the question to?
Oh, General Oliveira.
Well, it wasn't general. In his investigation, I did not give him that task to look at. I only asked him to look at the facts and circumstances surrounding what happened on January 13th. What you're talking about is threats and statements made by an individual from another country who's threatening the state of Hawaii, the territory of Guam, and the United States from a nuclear ballistic missile. I felt, based on information provided to me from HAIMA, that we needed to take further action and address this situation and prepare the public for an event. And Hawaii is the leading state of all the 50 states and territories taking action ahead of what is a threat to the state of Hawaii, along with the territory of Guam. And I now have other adjutants general and Homeland Security advisors asking me for advice on how they prepare their states.
But General Logan, the basic assumption would be that the enemy would want to vaporize or totally annihilate Pearl Harbor, a strategic location in the Pacific, rather than do an air burst with an electromagnetic pulse or some other alternative where you don't destroy the whole island or Pearl Harbor in that respect.
I wouldn't speculate on what the enemy in this case was intending to do.
But we wouldn't be here today if the assumptions were different.
No, I think the fact that there's a ballistic missile threat to the state of Hawaii begs the question that we should prepare for something. What that is, whether a direct impact or an air burst, to me is irrelevant. It's still a threat that we take seriously, and we need to inform the public of what we perceive to be a threatening situation.
A remote threat, as you stated.
We've said a highly unlikely threat, yes.
Over here.
Hi, Randy Brandt from ABC Nightly News. Major General Logan, will the name of the person who did make the mistake and push the button, will that ever be revealed?
My understanding is it would be revealed once the individual has appealed all the actions for disciplinary action, and at such time that can be released.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's have an AP up front here first, and then I'll get back to you.
Jennifer behind you, Kill Mike. Thank you, sorry. I'm Audrey from the Social Press. Sorry. I was wondering, under what circumstances did employee 1 stay in the world and test situations before? Was it, say, for a weather warning or maybe a missile alert into the lab?
There was employee 1, based on my investigation and what was given to me, had confused real world and drill on a fire incident and a tsunami incident.
And could you say maybe how many times that happened? Sorry. Yeah. Could you say how many times that happened in the past before this?
I was only told that that at least the statement was at least 2 times, and that's what I got.
Hey, Lonnie, do you want to go?
Sure. Governor Ige, were these facts known to you early on in the investigation, and why did you allow HAIMA leadership to stay on board?
No, I just became aware of the details of the report yesterday, and certainly support the action taken, the recommendations made, and the actions taken, personnel actions taken by General Logan.
And General Logan, can you explain the 1 employee who was suspended? What was his or her role?
That person was responsible for part of the state warning point protocols and the actions of the employees in that vicinity, and also helped develop the checklist and was further any additions or changes to the checklist as needed.
With General Oliveira, the FCC report also talked about that when that message came out saying the drill message for whatever reason, for some reason that it also came out, which was not the "this is not a drill" message. Can you explain how that happened?
That was the actual scripted message that was supposed to be read in the PACOM message. And as I said before, the PACOM message was an actual message. There are two messages, one that comes from PACOM, and then using that PACOM message, one that's supposed to be going out. The shift supervisor that sent this message out kind of combined both. So either message states, for example, one message mentions real world event. The other message says this is a drill, or this is not a drill. She did mention this is not a drill in her message to the warning point. However, it was preceded again with exercise, 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 and ended with exercise, exercise, exercise. And this was the protocol that they practiced 26 times before, that they're going to use that actual message with "this is not a drill" in there. So employee 1 heard "this is not a drill" and stated that he did not hear exercise, exercise, exercise until later on when the recording was played back to him.
So in other drills, that "this is not a drill" message was also sent out?
Yes, yes. This was practiced in other drills that they had done. Not with the same shift, and there are no records on which shift actually practiced, but there were 26 drills that were recorded by the telecom branch of HIEMA. And from that message, that scripted message was used.
Is that something that will be changed though in future?
Absolutely, and that's that recommendation I was making, with a simulation, separate computer on the side, standalone, separate script that says this is a drill, and continue the use of exercise, exercise, exercise.
The front, Allison.
Allison Schaefer with the Honolulu Star Advertiser. I just wanted a little bit more detail as far as the employee 1 and the previous incidents. Do you know how he was, if there were any actions as a result of that, and why he was allowed to continue in that position?
Any actions from the supervisor?
From the previous confusion of real world versus
yeah, there are anecdotes from the supervisor that said he counseled him.
Was he punished in any way or penalized or?
Just counseling and on the spot corrections made.
And why was he allowed to remain in that position given the seriousness of a ballistic alert?
The supervisor just made that call.
Well, the report shows that it indicates that the proper protocols needed to be in place, and they were not for this incident. And because of that, we asked for the investigation to determine what happened. And we continue to move forward to rebuild the trust of Hawaii Emergency Management Agency.
I just had, I wanted to clarify on the personnel action. So the employee that's been suspended, what is that employee's job title and number in this report?
That I'm not sure of. The employee is not suspended at this time. We are in the process of doing its suspension.
So the employee is still employed and undergoing, how would you clarify that?
I would clarify that by just receiving the report and reviewing it yesterday and finalizing, be able to determine what I believe is appropriate personnel actions.
Okay, so you've recommended that the employee be suspended, but you haven't suspended that employee.
That's correct.
Yet. And what is that employee's number and title?
I'd have to go back and check in I'll get that information for you.
And when was employee 1 terminated?
Employee 1 was terminated on Friday.
Okay. And prior to being terminated, was he on paid status?
My understanding, the employee did not come to work. He was...
But was he being paid?
Yes, he was.
Thank you.
Yeah, General Oliveira, I mean, you've commanded everything from a platoon up to a brigade. And everybody says you got to do the private snuffy test. You get the lowest ranking person and you ask him, do you know what the mission is? Do you know what the procedures are? And do you know what buttons to press? Don't you find it ironic that this never happened?
The protocols were not in place. It was a sense of urgency to put it in place as soon as possible, but those protocols were not developed to the point that they should have. And it left a lot of room for misunderstanding.
This is for General Logan. General, did you all approve the prior protocols before the fixes that have been made, specifically with just one person instead of two, and there not being some sort of an emergency remediation switch? Did those protocols at all meet your approval at any point?
As a director of emergency management, my job is not the day-to-day operations of what happens in the Hawaii Emergency Management. That's the administrator's responsibility. And they were developing the protocols. I was briefed on the aspects of what the concepts of things that were going on, but not as the individual protocols as they were being developed.
Should that change?
Absolutely.
Will it?
Yes, it will.
Okay. Brendan Awal with GAD TV for the Governor. Governor Ige, going forward, how do you regain the public's trust for future messages?
Well, as I stated at the beginning, we've already identified and implemented changes that are required to assure that an event with a delayed response never happens again. You know, we are seeking a new leader in the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency to really complete and implement changes required. As you are aware, I did appoint General Ken Hara, to take a comprehensive look at Hawaii preparedness for all hazards and identifying further improvements that need to be made to improve the preparedness of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. Clearly, General Oliveira's recommendations and findings will be a starting point of that work, but General Hara has been tasked with an even broader assessment of the work that needs to be done.
Do you think, go ahead. Do you think those changes, the next time if this were to happen and if it were real, people look at their phones and people would actually say, is this real?
Certainly, the safety and security of our community is the #1 priority today, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency, and they will continue to be. The work that is done by the agency for hurricane preparedness and tsunami preparedness, I think has served the people of Hawaii well. We will continue today at this time provide the state warning point responsibility, which will be to alert the community should there be an impending natural or man-made disaster.
Governor, as you're aware, other politicians and members of the public have said that you demonstrated a lack of leadership over handling of this issue. What is your response to that?
Well, you know, we definitely are committed to providing a warning to the public of impending natural or man-made disasters. We continue to do that. We recognize that in this event, there was a delay by the state warning point to inform the public that the alert was false. And we've already made the changes required to assure that it never happens again.
And I guess this is for either generals or whoever wants to address this as far as because in the beginning we were told that this was a standard change of shift drill. But now we're finding out this actually was a drill that was written about just a week before. Why was that the case?
It wasn't written a week before. Usually in a standard change of shift drill, information from the last shift is passed down to the incoming shift. This was done, however, they decided to also practice the ballistic missile alert. And it actually took place with the midnight shift and the night shift coming on just prior to this. So because they did that, they felt, well, this would be a good idea to try and do it again with the day shift now coming on. And that was, again, the sense of urgency in trying to ensure that everybody had enough practice on the drill and everybody felt comfortable with doing the drill. And unfortunately, again, the protocols though were not in detailed as they should have been.
And this is not a drill portion of it. That was not part of the normal drill though, or?
This is not a drill. It is part of the, yes.
Okay. And was there an investigation contract also that was initiated for this event?
An investigation contract. There is the tasking that General Logan gave to me for this investigation. That's signed by him, tasking me those 4 areas that I had covered previously.
Yeah, Manolo, can you
I'm not sure.
clarify what the question you're asking? I'm not sure if we follow.
Sort of a contract to actually do the investigation that I was told was for $30,000.
No.
No. That's General Oliver. General Hara is working, as the governor stated earlier, in his executive order, is doing a community-wide broad spectrum review of Hawaii preparedness with all the stakeholders, and part of that he's looking at possible contract with an outside agency to help him with his review of the entire process. So it's not an investigation in any, it's his review of the emergency management enterprise and with outside help to help him build his action plan and his final report to the governor.
So that's for an outside contractor?
Yes.
For $30,000.
Okay.
Can you tell us, General Logan, a little bit more as far as the one worker who was resigned? What are the circumstances with this worker? Not the one who was resigned, the one who was actually, you said one resigned and one was fired and one was suspended. So yeah, one who has resigned.
Well, as you know, one of the employees has resigned as of the onset of January 13th, and he's taken the opportunity, and he's made public statements to his resignation, so I wouldn't ascertain or try to speculate what his thoughts or processes were.
What was his role, though, at the time?
At the time, he was is the deputy within the organization.
Governor Ige, I know you've been asked this question before, but in retrospect, here you are, you hired a prominent military leader to do this plan, and you trusted that person. In retrospect, do you think that you should have maybe trusted but verified?
General Vern Miyagi, I think, has served the people of Hawaii well. He really believed that it was in the public interest and consistent with his responsibility to assure the safety and well-being of the community. He did note that there was increasing activity from North Korea and increasing tensions, and felt that it was important that we begin the process of creating a system of informing and alerting the public and beginning plans to help everyone in our community be prepared. And so certainly I have no regrets.
Going forward, are you going to take a more active role in this process?
Certainly, General Hara will be looking at the overall system. As I said, General Oliveira has identified a number of recommendations that will be implemented. I would reiterate that we have already identified and implemented changes that would assure that what happened on January 13th would never happen again. We certainly would be looking at the total agency and identify those changes that will strengthen and improve the community's preparedness for any disaster, man-made or natural.
We're here, so you can move the microphone.
So all the 26 previous times this was initiated, these were surprise drills on top of what would be considered like a regular change of shift drills. Is that correct?
These are drills that are not surprises. It's left up to the shift on when they want to conduct the drill and how they're going to conduct the drill, using what protocols were in place.
So then, in other words, the state warning officers know that these drills are coming at some point in the shift. There's some sort of advance notification of these special drills.
The supervisor knows exactly what they're going to do. In this instant, and that's the prerogative of the supervisor, they can say, okay, we want to test and do a surprise drill at this time, which happened on the 13th. That part of the change of shift was a surprise to the majority of the warning point.
So the 26 drills, it is not a surprise to the supervisor, but in those 26 instances, it is a surprise to the warning officers underneath the supervisor?
I really couldn't say. They could make it as a surprise, or they could say, yeah, we're going to do a practice drill this time, and we're going to go through our protocol step by step and make sure everybody understands it.
Had there ever been, do you know if there had ever been any prior instances in which this type of drill with the surprise, or however you want to characterize it, the one that occurred, if that had happened during a shift change the way it did, or did this typically happen inside the shift?
It typically happened within the shift. The only other incident that I know that had happened during the change of shift was the change of shift that happened between the midnight shift and the incoming shift. So it was that same shift that was outgoing in the morning. They had practiced it once before that night when they came on, and they decided that it was a good idea and wanted to do it again with the day shift that was coming in.
So the only other instance was the shift prior to the midnight shift transferring into the midnight?
That's the only other incident that I'm aware of.
And I'm sorry, I'm not sure if you've already answered. Are we aware how many times, if at all, the employee who pushed it, how many times he was involved in those any of those 26 prior exercises?
No, there are no records. All we know is that there are 26 times that a shift had practiced the event. We're not sure which shift.
Do you presume that he had been involved, if he's one of so many warning officers, that he had been involved in any of the prior shifts or any of the prior exercises?
I wouldn't want to speculate on that.
Other than the drills, the at least 2 drills, which he confused a real world event with a false one. That's basically what happened, right?
Yes.
Other than those instances, were there any other? And I know this is personnel, but as far as you can characterize or provide, were there any other non-drill related incidences at work pertaining to his performance that would have raised any red flags?
There are statements from other co-workers that they didn't feel comfortable working with him, that they felt that he was not capable of doing his job.
Why not?
His supervisor took action when he realized or was told about maybe lack of performance. And so, as stated earlier, there were counseling statements done with the individual, and there was on-the-spot corrections taken by his supervisor.
But that's specific to those drills, right? The false...
No, these could have been other performances, whether during exercise drills, not false drills, because that probably a bad terminology to use here. Those are all exercises that they use throughout their checklist. The nature of those other counseling statements, we're not sure exactly why, but we need to talk to his supervisor.
Scanning the room, do we have another? No? Yes. Any other questions at this point? Allison, up front here.
Can you hear me? Hold on. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thanks. Allison Shakers with the Star Advertiser. So one of the issues that has been raised by a lot of bystanders today looking into this is, why weren't some of the details that came out in the FCC probe as well as this report about how the events unfolded with the employee actually thinking it was a real threat rather than a false alarm. And they said that they feel like that's a transparency issue. Or at best, more lack of leadership or obfuscation. And I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on those concerns that they have going forward.
Certainly, let me just say this. General Oliveira was tasked with doing a fair and impartial assessment, and he needed to interview all of the employees and everyone involved in the process. I think it would be unfair to release statements collected piecemeal. Certainly, it wouldn't allow a full and complete evaluation of the event as it occurred if you're releasing statements one at a time in various capacities. Certainly, the General had completed this report as expeditiously as possible, and we're here today because of our effort and our commitment to transparency. I really believe that releasing a single statement ad hoc without completing the full report would actually be irresponsible and not a complete and accurate picture of the event.
But the information that was released, some would argue it painted an inaccurate picture of actually what happened. Could you not provide a few more details? Or, I mean, it's probably with good reason that they feel like it wasn't a correct statement.
Well, we immediately on the day of provided the timeline that we had assembled and provided at that point in time. We did ask the General to do a comprehensive review, which included the interviews that he conducted, and felt that to present the information piecemeal would not be appropriate.
But you don't feel like you provided inaccurate information with what you did provide?
No, I did not. And clearly, this other information I was not aware of until the General finished his report.
Okay, just one more question, Governor. There's a lot of discussion about leadership, and a lot of people have taken responsibility for what happened. It wasn't one person's fault. But a lot of people would say the buck stops at the very top. Do you intend to run for re-election?
Yes, I'm running for re-election.
If I can follow up, Governor, because I know from the beginning that the state has talked about being transparent about all this because it's important to gain the public's trust. But then as we find out more information, it wasn't very transparent with the worker not cooperating, which we found out just a few days ago. And now we're finding out that he actually thought that it was a real attack. That's why he actually pushed the button. Those are all very critical pieces of information that was not released.
Certainly, that information was discovered as part of General Oliveira's assessment and analysis, and we are making that information available today. As I stated earlier, I think it would be inappropriate to release information piecemeal as the General is conducting his evaluation. I certainly wasn't aware of any of this specific information until briefed on the general's report when it was completed.
And General Logan, with worker number 1 being, that has been mentioned, where he had confusing real world as well as drill activities, as well as now other workers complaining about him. I think a lot of people are wondering, why is this person in this position still? Or why was he in that position still?
Valid question, but as I said earlier, his supervisor with his employees was taking what he felt appropriate action, I believe, in counseling and mentoring his subordinates so that they could perform their job. I wouldn't speculate on the other employees and whether everyone, wondered why he was still there. That's between the supervisor and the employee.
Let's go back to Civil Beat over here, and then we'll take a couple more questions, and then I believe the governor has a closing statement.
Sorry, I just want to clarify. So the exercise on both ends, that is separate from the recording. In other words, that's not part of the same stream of recording. That's something that somebody would manually tack on and tack on again at the end.
The recording itself is whatever the supervisor says, and it is a standard practice that all drills begin and end with exercise, exercise, exercise.
So that's part of the recording. The recording is whatever they want, but it always includes as part of the recording that exercise, exercise, exercise.
Yes.
Somebody doesn't push a button for those 3 words and then the recording and then push the button.
It's not a recording. It's what they state is recorded.
Okay, so they verbally said those words. They
verbally said those words, and that is on the recording, because every message that they practice is recorded as they do it. But it's not a recording where they just press the button and then the message comes out.
So when you're referring to recording, that's after the fact, the recording of what they said live at the time?
Yes.
And so that script is what was used all 26 times, or is that up to the discretion, or do we know how many times that was used? 26 times?
I don't know how many times it was used. And again, the script and the checklist itself, the way that it's written and put together, there's a lot of room for interpretation by each shift on how they want to do it. It doesn't, even the script itself, it does not say exercise, exercise, exercise at the top, and it doesn't say that at the bottom. It's not written in there. It's just a standard practice with all drills that the shifts understand that has to be said.
But there's a lot of leeway on what they can say as far as what their script.
Yes.
Okay. And sorry, just to clarify, I'm still a little confused on how many people, the status, there's 2 resignations, including Vern Miyagi. Is that correct?
That's correct.
2 resignations, one termination.
Yes.
And 1 facing suspension.
That's correct.
And the 1 termination is the button push, the person who issued the false.
Yes.
Do we have one last question? If not, Governor, your closing statement.
Just thank you for joining us this morning. Just wanted to assure you that the men and women who work for the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency are committed 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year to assure the health and well-being and safety of the community. And they do that job well. We need to remember that there are many instances that the state warning point has functioned in good stead in keeping our community abreast of impending natural disasters. We continue to do our work to make the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency better prepared and keeping our community better prepared. As you may recall, I did issue an executive order appointing Brigadier General Kenneth Hara to do a comprehensive assessment of the Hawaii Emergency Management Agency. General Oliveira's report will be a starting point, and we will be looking at broader opportunities to engage the public and the community so that we can all be better prepared for disasters should they occur. We do know that we are committed to develop the best warning and emergency management system for our people, because we understand how important it is for us to be able to communicate and warn the public when there is an impending disaster. And we will continue to exercise that function. So thank you very much for being here.
Thanks, everybody. I'll be sticking around in case you need clarification when you have additional questions you want to ask. Thanks.
Thank you.